I'm so glad you're here again. I just love spending time with you. In fact, I think I'm your number one fan. Here's 19 reasons to read Misery. Hi everyone, I'm Dave Musson at Dave Musson on Instagram. Welcome back to my channel where I'm going through the entire works of Stephen King in chronological order and giving you 19 reasons to read each book. I'm giving you 19 reasons because it's Stephen King and 19 is the most important number in that world. If that sounds like something you'd like more of, do go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos, and feel free to check out what I've already published. There's quite a few there now to keep you busy for at least 10 minutes. In this video, we're still in 1987. We've survived a terrible car accident and now we're holed up in recovery with our number one fan. Yep, it's Misery. So lie back, relax, and don't even think about trying to make a cock-a-doodle escape because, I'll know about it. Here are 19 reasons to read Misery, and as always, the potential for some spoilers ahead. Cock-a-doodle. So this should have been a Bachman book. When he started writing it, it was going to be a Bachman book, but then the whole Bachman story came out while he was still working on it. But imagine if this had ended up being a Bachman book. This would be the only real rival to The Long Walk for the title of the best Bachman book. So as I mentioned in a previous video, one of the inspirations for King to write Misery was his own fans' reaction to his 1984 novel, The Eyes of the Dragon. Now, as you remember from that, fans kind of pushed back because it was a fantasy novel and it was a kid's book and they didn't like it, even though that's exactly what King had set out to try and do with that book. Fans, hey, fucking idiots sometimes. So there are plenty of themes in this book that are really close to King's own life at that time, and to be honest, you don't have to scratch very hard to work out what they are. Let's take the lead character, Paul Sheldon, who is an author and feels completely chained to his own creation, Misery Chastain, and his Misery series of books. In this book himself, Paul tries to write something different and his so-called number one fan rejects it outright. That's how King felt about horror. He wanted to do other things, but a core group of his fans said no. Now before I forget, and this is an important one, you remember how we've discovered this little theme of Stephen King's own working titles for his books being, well, shit? He went one step further in Misery. Paul Sheldon's new book that he's writing in this book is genuinely called Fast Cars. Fast Cars. No wonder Rob Reiner changed it to Untitled for the movie. So another theme in Misery is addiction. And kind of no surprise really, King at the time was struggling to kick a drugs and alcohol addiction of his own, and he would actually go on to become clean the year after this was published. But here's what he said many years later about writing Misery. Bear with me. So he said, "Take the psychotic nurse in Misery, which I wrote when I was having such a tough time with dope. I knew what I was writing about. There was never any question. Annie was my drug problem, and she was my number one fan. God, she never wanted to leave." So King actually had some of the ideas for Misery appear to him in a dream while on a transatlantic flight to London. He woke up and scribbled a load of notes on a napkin while still on the plane, so he didn't lose those ideas. Want to know what he wrote? Well, allow me. He wrote, "She speaks earnestly, but never quite makes eye contact. A big woman and solid all through. She is an absence of hiatus." No, I don't know what that means. "I wasn't trying to be funny in a mean way when I named my pig Misery. No, sir, please don't think that. No, I named her in the spirit of fan love, which is the purest love there is. You should be flattered." From that simple scribbling on a napkin, Misery ended up being born. So when that flight touched down and the Kings got to London, they were staying at the Browns Hotel. And in that hotel, King wrote about 16 pages of a notebook getting started on this story. Where did he write them? Well, the concierge offered him a desk to use, which was actually a desk previously owned by Rudyard Kipling. And it was the desk where Rudyard Kipling had suffered a stroke at and died at. I mean, cool, thanks. So King's original plan for Misery was for it to be a short story, where Annie would force Paul to write a new book, then kill him, feed him to her pig, and bind her copy of that new book using Paul's skin. Yeah, you can feel the Bachman cruelty there, can't you? That book, as it happens, would have been called the Annie Wilkes edition, which for King as a working title is not actually too bad. So why did King change it? Well, King says that Paul ended up being more resourceful than he'd originally thought, and that Annie ended up being more complicated. And he was having fun writing her. So I've got to reason 10 and I've not really given you the hook of this book yet, have I? So our main character, Paul Sheldon, as I mentioned, is an author. He's a very popular author of these bodice-ripping stories about Misery Chastain. They're labelled the Misery series, but they are making Paul miserable. So he kills Misery off and tries to write something different, the aforementioned fast cars. Lol. Anyway, Paul is driving his own fast car after finishing work on his new novel, gets in a very bad accident and gets rescued by a former nurse who happens to be his #1 fan. Now, because of the bad weather, this nurse can't take him to hospital, so takes him home and starts caring for Paul herself. Thing is, when Annie, this nurse, discovered what's happened to Misery, she's not happy. And when she reads Paul's new book, she's not happy. So the rest of this story is about Annie forcing Paul to write a new Misery story. And if Paul doesn't do what Annie says, not good. So let me take a moment to show you the mock Misery book cover that is included in the original paperback. Yes, that is Stephen King. Shameless from our man Stevie, shameless. But kind of hot. So Annie eventually sets Paul up with a home office, a horrible old typewriter where the ends don't work, a desk and a load of paper. And Paul sets about writing Misery's Return and lets Annie read it as he's going along and filling in the blank ends. As a special treat, we as readers get to see extracts of that novel in Misery. It's not good. So as well as writing, Paul does a few other things, including learning how to escape from his room in his wheelchair while Annie is out and about. On one of those trips, when he's trying to get more painkillers, he stumbles across Annie's special scrapbook documenting her career as a nurse. Let's just say from that point on, Annie becomes a whole lot more terrifying. So how does this sound? A dreadful mixed stench of vanilla cookies and chocolate ice cream and chicken gravy and peanut butter fudge. No, I'm not describing what I'm cooking for my lunch. That is the smell of Annie Wilkes' breath when she is giving Paul mouth to mouth at the start of this book. So while this book is mainly a thriller, there are some particularly gruesome moments, and I'm going to use a few of my 19 reasons to pick out ones to look for. Number 1, the axe. Number 2, the electric knife and the birthday cake. And number 3, the lawnmower. So the climax to this one is pretty damn great. I'm not going to say too much more, but your heart will be thumping. Finally, and this is, I guess, not really necessarily a reason to read the book, but you probably know this one has been turned into a very, very excellent movie. It's a movie for which Kathy Bates won the Oscar for her portrayal as Annie Wilkes. But did you also know it had been turned into a play? That's right, in 2015 there was a stage production of Misery and it starred Laurie Metcalf and Bruce Willis. I can totally see that working. So there you go, 19 reasons to read Misery by Stephen King. Do let me know what you think of this one in the comments, and if you think you're my #1 fan, then please don't damage my body with any sharp implements. Just come over to Instagram where I'm @DaveMusson and let's chat. Next up, it's the Tommyknockers, which is a fucking mess. So let's see what fun we can have with that one. In the meantime, take care and I'll see you soon.